Good day, fight fans, and welcome back to Pressure Point. In a shot, the PFL has started snatching UFC stars, signing ex-champions and undefeated prospects with million-dollar contracts and total career freedom. Behind the scenes, Dana White's losing it, scrambling to stop the chaos.
Thank you for all the kind words. I appreciate it. I am so tired. Literally said nothing to them, never spoke to them or anything. That entire story was a absolute bullshit lie. The craziest thing we've ever seen.
Past the UFC finally met its match. Things exploded when the Professional Fighters League bought Bellator in late 2023 for around $100 million, instantly leveling up from a small tournament brand to a major MMA powerhouse.
I am so tired of doing podcasts. I'm literally done with them. I'm not doing any more podcasts.
But what really lit Dana up wasn't just that buyout. It was watching fighter after fighter ditch the UFC for PFL's money and freedom. His empire was slipping, and the frustration boiled over at UFC Vegas 73. Right after Francis Ngannou signed with PFL, Dana couldn't hide it. His rant was pure meltdown disguised as fight talk. With enough sarcasm to flood the Apex Center, Dana went off, shredding every part of the PFL's game plan. He mocked them as a cash-burning circus, fueled by Saudi money and zero logic.
PFL's going to pay this guy to train for a boxing match that may not even happen and that they might not even be involved in. How does that make any sense? It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Anthony Joshua called it a gimmick fight this week.
White blasted Francis Ngannou, saying he wanted no danger, refused to fight Jon Jones, and was getting paid just to train for boxing fights that might never happen. He even claimed PFL was begging Middle Eastern investors for $300 million while pulling no ratings, no ticket sales, calling it all a fantasy league gone wild.
And Francis wants to take zero risks. Doesn't want to take any chances. And he obviously didn't want to take a chance against Jon Jones. And after we saw what happened with Cyril Gane, you know, I don't blame him. I think the outcome would have been exactly the same. And I'm sure most of you do, and I'm sure Francis does too. You know, and the media makes it sound like that I'm saying that he's afraid of him. I don't think that he's afraid of anybody. It's just the fact that he doesn't want to take any risks.
But the kicker, Ngannou's debut pulled 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. Some fans say Dana was just projecting his frustration onto the PFL's rise. The MMA world instantly split, in two half cheering Francis Ngannou's power move, half calling him out for ducking Jon Jones. Social media went wild, and Reddit's MMA crowd went nuclear with threads hitting thousands of upvotes, breaking down every detail. One viral post even claimed Ngannou just changed the game forever, saying the UFC's monopoly was finally under fire. But UFC diehards weren't having it. They backed Dana, insisting Francis priced himself out of the big leagues. They bragged about UFC's unmatched star power and showmanship, the empire that built legends. Critics called PFL the minor leagues with major league money, all flash, no substance. But others saw something deeper. PFL CEO Peter Murray called Ngannou's signing transformational, praising him not just as a fighter, but as a businessman who could change how athletes negotiate their worth. Murray made it clear, this wasn't just about signing a champion, it was about rewriting the fighter playbook. But things got messy again when Muhammad Mokaev's story blew up in July 2024. An undefeated UFC prospect, 7-0 and ranked number 6 at flyweight, was suddenly let go. At UFC 304, Dana tried to play it cool, sarcastically saying PFL was getting a great undefeated guy, while hinting the matchmakers just didn't like Mokaev's attitude. Fans saw right through it, accusing the UFC of punishing a rising star for not falling in line. Social media exploded, calling it a power move gone wrong. The optics were brutal. It looked like the UFC cared more about control than talent. When Derek Brunson joined PFL in October 2023, it added fuel to the fire. Despite a solid 16-8 UFC record with wins over top contenders, he was cut after a bad stretch. Brunson's open shots at UFC or mistreated. Then came his multi-year PFL deal worth over $300K per FIG8, proving that UFC's mid-tier stars could find real money elsewhere. But PFL's image took a hit with Thiago Santos, the former title challenger, who signed in July 2023, only to become one of 10 PFL fighters busted for EPO a few months later. Dana jumped on the scandal instantly, mocking PFL's clean sport image and claiming they were crumbling under their own hype. The doping mess handed him the perfect ammo to question. if PFL was really any better than the UFC. Fans who once hyped up PFL signings suddenly started questioning everything. Rumors spread that the league's loose oversight had turned it into a ped playground. Then came Marcin Tybura's exit in February 2024, which had the MMA world talking. Tybura was a top -10 heavyweight, with a 10-8 UFC record, and wins over names like Augusto Sakai and Andrei Arlovski. Yet he was cut. Fans immediately called it UFC cost, cutting at its worst, when he signed a $200 K per fight deal with PFL and won by knockout in his debut. It became clear UFC was trimming budgets, PFL was cashing in. Then came Viviane Araújo and Ariane da Silva signings in September 2025, both bringing UFC experience and star appeal. Araújo had big wins at flyweight, and Silva, known as the Queen of Violence, brought serious hype. Their UFC releases caused major backlash online, with fans accusing Dana of cutting talent just to flex control. Fans who once hyped the PFL superstar signings suddenly started to doubt the league's clean image. Whispers spread that their lax drug testing had turned the place into a ped paradise. Then came Marcin Tybura's shocking UFC exit in February 2024, and the MMA world lit up. He was a top -10 heavyweight with a 10-8 record and wins over names like Augusto Sakai and Andrei Arlovski. Yet, he got cut. Fans instantly called it a UFC cost. Cutting move that made no sense. Tybura's quick rebound, a $200 K per fight PFL deal, and a knockout debut win told the story loud and clear. UFC was saving pennies. PFL was spending power. Then came Viviane Araújo and Ariane da Silva's 2025 PFL signings, both bringing UFC pedigree and real star value. Their UFC releases sparked online outrage, with fans blasting Dana for firing ranked fighters just to keep control. The optics were rough. It looked like UFC cared more about roster control than real competition. Then Sage Northcutt's return to US MMA through PFL in December 2024 shook things up again. Once a hyped UFC prodigy, Sage came back under a $150 K+ deal, proving PFL was willing to gamble on comeback stories that the UFC wouldn't touch. These bold signings piled pressure on Dana White's empire, especially after Shane Burgos's 2022 exit, which Dana later admitted was a huge mistake. More and more fighters, fed up with UFC's strict contracts and low pay, started chasing PFL's freedom and fat checks. By 2025, the UFC's monopoly was cracking fast, and Dana's tense pressers made it obvious he felt it. Meanwhile, PFL co-founder Don Davis kept poking the bear, bragging that PFL's social numbers rivaled UFC's. Their PPVs were outdrawing major UFC cards, and they were ready to be the new co-leader in MMA. By late 2025, it didn't even matter if Don Davis's bold claims were true. He'd already gotten inside Dana White's head. His taunts kept PFL in the spotlight, forcing the UFC boss to fire back publicly again and again. By October 2025, the numbers spoke for themselves. PFL had scooped up 15-20 ex-UFC fighters, building real depth across multiple divisions, and proving it was no longer just a tournament league. Sure, the UFC struck back by snagging stars like Kayla Harrison from PFL and Bellator. But for the first time ever, fighter traffic ran both ways. The balance of power in MMA was shifting fast, and Dana's rants couldn't stop it. The UFC vs. PFL rivalry had evolved into a full-blown war for legitimacy, with both sides battling not just for fighters, but for fans, media, and investor loyalty. What started as PFL's fighter-first mission had turned into a public PR war, waged through pressers, tweets, and headline-grabbing signings, meant to embarrass the UFC. The rivalry hit peak drama in October 2024, when Dana White exploded at the Power Slap 9 press conference after Don Davis bragged that PFL was beating the UFC in multiple metrics. Dana came armed with receipts, literally pulling out a stat sheet and tearing PFL's claims apart. He said PFL couldn't even top Power Slap's engagement numbers, calling them all talk, no traction. His message was loud and clear: keep UFC's name out your mouth, unless you can back it up. White dropped the numbers. UFC averaging 500 million monthly views versus PFL's 50 million, and PPVs pulling millions compared to PFL's modest 5 million per event. His point: PFL was swinging hard but still out of its league. But Don Davis wasn't backing down, firing back with cherry-picked stats and bold predictions, keeping the feud hotter than ever. Don Davis doubled down. claiming PFL's Battle of the Giants in October 2024, starring Francis Ngannou, outperformed every UFC event that year and even cost more to produce than UFC 306 at the Sphere. He taunted Dana, predicting the UFC boss would soon announce something just to steal PFL's spotlight. Whether Davis believed his own hype or was just stirring the pot didn't matter. He'd nailed the marketing game. PFL now looked like it was playing in the UFC's league, and that illusion alone was powerful. The feud actually boosted fighter leverage across the board. For the first time, free agents could threaten to join PFL and force UFC to offer better contracts. That was unheard of back when UFC ruled uncontested. With PFL's $1 million tournament prizes, ladder adjusted to $500K, fighters finally had real options and real bargaining power. By 2025, PFL's revamped divisions gave fighters a clear, fair shot at real money. No confusing bonuses, no backstage promises. Just win the tournament, grab the prize. It was transparent, simple, and rewarding. A breath of fresh air for fighters tired of UFC's secretive bonus system. Then came the Bellator bombshell, PFL's $100 million acquisition that instantly leveled up its game. The merger added around 150 fighters, giving PFL enough depth to run over 30 events a year instead of just seasonal tournaments. Suddenly, it looked like a true global competitor, inching closer to UFC's scale. Of course, Dana White mocked the move, calling it insane for a company with no ratings or ticket sales to buy another one. But the joke might have been on him, because PFL's expansion was starting to look less like a gamble and more like a takeover in progress. Dana's sarcasm was on full blast, mocking PFL for burning cash and calling their approach absolutely genius. Knowing everyone understood, he meant the opposite. He claimed PFL was doubling down on failure, but behind the scenes, the league was pushing global expansion harder than ever. With PFL Africa, led by Francis Ngannou, and PFL Europe, the promotion was directly challenging UFC's global grip. These moves targeted regions where UFC was strong, but not untouchable. PFL Africa's goal to reach 100 million viewers showed they weren't just competing, they were building a worldwide empire. By 2025, the White vs. Davis feud was a full-blown spectacle. Davis accused Dana of fearing PFL's rise, teased UFC vs. PFL crossover super fights, and branded his league as the innovative disruptor, shaking up a stale sport. Dana fired back, flexing UFC's bigger numbers and deeper roots. Refusing to give an inch, Dana kept questioning PFL's finances, calling them a desperate promotion throwing ideas at the wall. Analysts, meanwhile, were split. Some said this UFC TP-PFL war was finally helping fighters get paid what they deserve, while others argued it was distracting from real issues like fighter health, brain trauma, and broken pay structures. The money side told its own story. UFC raked in $1.3 billion in 2025, up 15% from the year before, with sold-out arenas and massive PPVs. Meanwhile, PFL made around $200 million, still struggling for consistent viewership despite its big-name signings. But then came the shocker, Francis Ngannou's 2024 debut, pulling 1.2 million PPV buys, proving PFL could hang with the giants. The UFC's $7.7 billion Paramount deal gave Dana's empire unmatched muscle, but PFL wasn't broke. Their ESPN nud, DAZN, and Saudi backers gave them plenty of runway to keep stealing stars and shaking up the game. The question was never if PFL could survive. The Saudi money guaranteed that. The real test was whether they could turn that cash into long-term growth and fan loyalty. Dana White kept waving his stat sheets, bragging that UFC crushed PFL with 500 million monthly views, vs. PFL's 50 million, a 10-1 beatdown. But Don Davis fired back, saying growth rate mattered more than raw numbers, claiming PFL's audience was rising faster than ever. Fighters soon jumped into the debate. Some praised PFL's flexibility, its boxing crossovers, and equity deals, calling it the future of fighter freedom. Others weren't buying it, accusing PFL of sloppy scheduling and pay cuts after the Bellator merger, with reports of fighters earning up to 70% less than promised. Neither side came out spotless, just louder. Still, insiders noticed the ripple effect. UFC quietly tweaking its contract system, borrowing a few PFL-inspired ideas, even if Dana would never admit it. By late 2025, UFC's Contender Series was in overdrive, signing 4 new fighters a week to show it was doubling down on talent and depth. The MMA battlefield had been completely reshaped. EFC still ruled the throne with bigger numbers, deeper rosters, and unmatched production power. But PFL had earned real respect, no longer just another regional league waiting to collapse. Their rise forced the UFC to stay sharp, and even the non-stop trash talk between Dana White and Don Davis worked in both their favor, keeping MMA hotter than ever in headlines. The rivalry did more than entertain. It exposed cracks in Dana's $11 billion empire. Fighters finally had leverage, thanks to PFL's higher guarantees and flexible contracts. What used to be complaints about pay turned into real negotiation power, proving that PFL's pressure had forced the UFC to evolve, whether Dana liked it or not. The UFC's reforms didn't come from kindness. They came from pressure and exposure. Competitive heat and courtroom drama forced Dana's empire to finally face its flaws. The long-running antitrust lawsuit, first filed in 2014, ended in a $375 million settlement in February 2025, blowing the lid off UFC's pay practices. The case accused the company of colluding to suppress fighter wages, locking athletes into exclusive deals, and blocking rivals from competing. Leaked documents showed UFC execs openly discussing low pay strategies and ways to cripple other promotions before they could rise. When Judge Richard Boulware rejected UFC's first $335 million offer in 2024, saying it didn't fix anything, the league had no choice but to go bigger. The final $375 million payout confirmed how underpaid fighters really were, and once those revenue share numbers hit the public, fans saw the truth. UFC had been keeping fighters at the bottom while cashing record profits. Court documents revealed the ugly truth. UFC fighters were getting just 13–20% of total revenue, compared to 50% or more in leagues like the NBA or NFL. By 2025, UFC's revenue had topped $1.3 billion, yet entry-level fighters still made only $12K, $15K per bout. Dana White kept defending it with his classic "they eat what they kill" line, claiming the system was merit-based, not unfair. But critics pointed out that favoritism, matchmaking, and promotional hype decided who got paid, not pure skill. Meanwhile, PFL was flipping the script. Their structure offered guaranteed prizes up to $1 million, later adjusted to $500K, plus big incentives for challengers. Fighters like Francis Ngannou were reportedly pulling over $2 million per FIG8 plus equity and full freedom to box. That contrast hit hard. Suddenly, PFL looked like the fighters' league, and the public pressure forced UFC to quietly raise base pay in 2025, marking a rare win for the athletes and a crack in Dana's "eat what you kill" empire. EFC finally raised prelim fighter pay from $12K to $15K per FIGAT, a small bump, but a big sign of pressure. That 25% increase showed even Dana White knew the old numbers weren't cutting it anymore. He tried to spin the change as a perk from the $7.7 billion Paramount deal, hinting that extra revenue would trickle down to fighters, but never promised real revenue sharing or reform. Meanwhile, the health insurance gap stayed a black eye on UFC's record. Unlike major leagues with full medical coverage, fighters still paid out of pocket for injuries suffered in camp or the cage. Francis Ngannou had made it clear no health insurance was one of the biggest reasons he walked away. That alone spoke volumes. And with PFL offering partial benefits and equity deals to top stars, Dana's empire looked outdated, a powerhouse still refusing to protect the people who built it. Sure, PFL had its own flaws, but its push for fighter ownership stakes and full benefits was something UFC never even considered. Until now, competitive heat forced Dana's team to test small pilot programs for elite fighters, though nothing major had changed by October 2025. The unsealed antitrust documents exposed just how tightly UFC controlled its roster. Those multi-fight deals and champion clauses trapped fighters for years. Win a title, and your contract auto-extended, making freedom nearly impossible. On top of that, outside sponsorship bans and zero cross-promotional options left fighters earning a fraction of what stars in boxing or tennis could make. By then, it was obvious. PFL's flexible contracts had forced UFC to rethink its grip. Even if Dana White refused to admit it, the power balance in MMA was starting to shift, and fighters finally had leverage. PFL's move to let Francis Ngannou box, raking in huge paydays from Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, proved that fighters didn't need to be locked down to one cage to make history. That freedom showed a smarter model, one that maximized earnings instead of limiting them. For fighters with short careers and ticking clocks, PFL's flexibility was gold. Meanwhile, UFC's ban on crossovers suddenly looked outdated, all about control, not opportunity. Even UFC's $50K performance bonuses started catching heat. Sure, they were nice when handed out, but fighters couldn't plan their lives around random rewards. In contrast, PFL's transparent prize system, where everyone knew exactly what a win was worth, made the UFC's pay setup look like a guessing game. The message was clear: fighters wanted stability, not surprises, and PFL was giving it to them. By 2024-2025, UFC's fighter retention battle was in full swing. They started throwing out bigger bonuses and contract perks to rising stars like Shara Magomedov, desperate to keep them from jumping ship to PFL once their deals ended. Even Dana White admitted letting Shane Burgos leave for PFL was a major mistake, a rare moment of honesty, showing how real the pressure had become. Another major gap: scheduling. UFC offered no guaranteed fight frequency, leaving fighters waiting months without pay while still covering training costs. PFL's tournament system, though not perfect, gave athletes set dates and clear payouts, offering more financial security, even with fewer fights per year. And when UFC lobbied to block the Ali Act from covering MMA, a law that protects boxers, critics saw it for what it was: an attempt to keep control, not to protect fighters. The contrast was sharp. UFC clinging to power, PFL giving fighters a plan. Promoters like Eddie Hearn started calling out the UFC's resistance to giving fighters the same legal protections that boxers already had. With so much power tilted toward the promotions, critics ask the obvious: why should MMA athletes be treated differently? The rise of PFL as a real alternative sparked a bigger movement across the sport. Talks of fighter unions, fairer contracts, and independent rankings that could finally balance the scales between fighters and promoters. Sure, progress was slow, but even having those conversations marked real change compared to the old days when UFC's dominance shut everything down. By October 2025, the shift was visible. UFC quietly raised base pay, boosted bonuses, and worked harder to keep top prospects from walking. It wasn't a revolution yet, but it was the first crack in the cage. Despite all the noise, UFC's core system barely changed. Fighters still faced low revenue shares, tight contracts, and limited benefits, with pay bonuses handed out at Dana's discretion. PFL's pressure had forced some tweaks, but not a true overhaul. The future now hangs on PFL's staying power. If their Saudi backing holds strong, and they keep building big stars who draw real audiences, the UFC will be forced to evolve, whether it wants to or not. But if PFL stumbles, fails to stay consistent, or stops pulling major events, Dana White's UFC could slide right back into business as usual with zero backlash. Right now, the MMA world is still shifting, and fighter pay is being shaped, not by unions or new laws, but by raw competition and who's got the bigger leverage at the table. And that is all from Pressure Point today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment, letting us know which story stood out to you most. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.